Okay. Hey, this is Frank Hughes of Piano Pickers. I've had several people ask me basically examples of the type of work I do, and the best thing I could do is on my own Fender Rhodes. This is a 1973 model. It was built on the 20th week of 1973, which that means it would be 20. It would be somewhere in May, 1st of June, that area. And this is a Fender Rhodes. It is an 88 key. It's a stage model. And here's what I've done with it so far. Well, I'm pretty much done with it, period. First thing was the keys. The keys have been polished. I removed any stains and everything else. I use, basically I started out using a polish from Meguiar's, which is basically a polishing compound for cars. And I use a cotton wheel on a bench grinder to use it to buff them up, and it did really well. And I went all the way up to their top end product, which is, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a finishing, and it gives a mirror glaze. So that's what I did when I took this thing apart and really did a lot of work with it. The other thing is you'll notice is this right here. This is not Fender Tweed. It is a lookalike product that's a Tolex product, which is great because you don't have to do any maintenance with it. And it goes on really, really easy considering it has a diagonal pattern. I also replaced all the hardware on the exterior with new hardware. That makes a big difference in the way it looks, obviously. I did polish up on mine. I could use the cups that the legs go into. I was able to salvage them, and that saved me about 50 bucks. The other thing I had done, since we're talking about this, is the legs on this. These are the original legs, and I did polish them. I did get new end tips on them, and I polished them, and I did have to make some repairs to where they intersect up with the plug that screws into the receiver on the unit. The other thing, again, I polished also the pedal and the damper pedal rod. So, and also there are screws that hold the piano together on the bottom, and I did replace those with new screws and new cap washers on there, or cup washers, excuse me. So anyway, now we'll come back up. That covers almost everything on the exterior, a couple minor details later. And then back here again, I used a product from Germany. It's Semichrome. It's a polishing agent and it works real well for bright metals like aluminum. And you see I polished at the bottom here. Instead of leaving it matte, I polished it to a gloss to give a reflection of the keys. I think that looks really, really cool. Now, I put this in about 10 years ago. It's a Vintage Vibe stereo vibrato unit. I like it. Unfortunately, I'm going to send it back because I'm having a problem with basically a changing of the speed of not the intensity, but the speed of the vibrato effect. So I'm having to send it back and having that worked on. More to follow on that. Then over here, you have the keys, and I'm going to take this out, the rails or fall board, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put it out of the way here. Make sure I don't hit anything with it. There we go. Okay. Now, as you can tell, the keys have been cleaned up really well. I did polish up the key pins themselves. They're polished up. I also made sure they weren't bent, straightened any that weren't. And I was able to leave any documentation on there, which I was successful. I wanted to make sure I left all the documentation in the way of, numbers and everything else for this unit. The next thing, I did go in, the hammers themselves are fine, but the hammer tips were really worn. So I replaced them. I used Vintage Vibe. I used their standard, which is pretty much very close to the original. I really kind of prefer to keep mine sounding the same as it did, and it does. And I took some time to cut those off, and then you take and you then glue it on with a contact type cement. So did that. Now the other thing, let's go up here. I did the dampers. Those are all new, or relatively new dampers, and they work just great. And the original dampers were very hard, and these are nice and pliable now. Next, let's go up to the harp. I took the harp, took everything off of the harp down, and then I painted the harp. Unfortunately, lesson learned there, the paint, for some reason, there must have been some oil or something there. So full disclosure, this is mine. It doesn't hurt anything, but for some reason it bubbled up here. Then you'll look, this right here, the wood on the harp assembly was taken, and I took it and I put a couple of coats of polyurethane on it, and it's nice and sealed up that way. So this again was pretty rough looking. The harp itself was pretty rough looking. And then doing that, the other thing I did was there's this material that's called, it's a foil for conducting, and it's used as a ground to ground the pickups and the tines. And instead of putting the aluminum style, I went with a copper. One, it just looks cooler, and two, it's better conductor. And so it works a lot better. Even when it starts corroding, it actually will conduct better than the aluminum. Then now, all I did here was I cleaned the pickups, made sure there was no rust, no oxidation. I ran each one of the pickups, the tines, cleaned them, made sure they were good and clean. Made sure though I didn't use steel wool, because I don't want, the fuzz from steel wool like hanging there and then being transferred to the pickups. These pickups are magnetic, and it's just not good for them to be coated in steel wool. The pickups I just cleaned, and just generally cleaned them, nothing special. And then you see they look really good, no corrosion at all on them. They're nice and clean. So that was able to do that. Now the other thing I did do was to make sure that it's got even sound. I adjusted all the pickups where they need to be during the escapement adjustment. So the pickups are facing squarely with the tines to get the best sound possible. And again, the tines, which whatever you do, you hate to see these down here break. I do actually have spares of these tines, the long base tines, because they are hard to find. And then I've got all the tines are in good shape. Now it's all good, all nice and clean. Okay, let's go ahead and shut the harp now. The RCA connector to the harp has been replaced. The other had gotten very hard and I think it actually had some leakage issues, so it's all nice and fixed up. Now, the harp is, as you can tell, it's just, again, you look here from the front, you can see I did maintain, for example, the Fender information there, the serial number, the model number, and the manufacturer date. So I've got all that. Everything else, the other thing what I did was I also, on the back here, if you'll look how deep I went with the material from the Tolex. It didn't cost me anything more. The case was painted flat black on the inside, and then the Tolex was then brought down, and so it's nice and sealed up now, as far as I'm concerned, from weather, like moisture and nonsense like that. Okay, so as you can tell, the grommets here are new too. I replaced the grommets and the grommet screws, and I also replaced the springs. The springs had collapsed in certain situations, and again, it was just, I had them and I felt like it was just, to go ahead and, I don't want to have to sit there and mess with them. The pickups on this model have been excellent. No problems with the pickups, although I do wind pickups when necessary. Okay, the next thing I wanted to do is I'm gonna put down this. Let's put the fall board key slip, key rail back in place. And then, let me see here. Okay, let's see. There we go. Got that in place. Then let me get this in place. Now I'll put the last piece of it, which is the top. The top has been painted a copper color, and which I really like the color. I use a special primer on the plastic, and the idea would be would be, I wanted to make sure, because this is a thermoplastic top, and I wanted to make sure everything was going to would seat fine. Excuse me, here on. There we go. And this, okay, I'll get that back in place. There we go. That's in place. That's in place. Okay. Now we're back. Okay, here it is with the lid on. The finish looks really nice, but it takes a little bit of effort to do this because you need to sand the top, fix all the problems with the top, and then you need to use a special sealer on it. So anyways, you can tell it looks really, really great. I'm real pleased how it turned out there. So the coup de grace on here is on the back. I have got an emblem on the back, which looks really nice there. And the last piece is I did make a top here, and I'm gonna put that on real quick. Hang on. I also have a top I can put on here, and it's a little different color, but I thought it was cool. And this gives me a flat surface, and I could then put my piano on, my digital pedal on top. So that's really what is, that is pretty much what I've all done to this unit. And anyway, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.